Case 1. Jocelyn Carr. Jocelyn Carr was the heartbeat of her neighborhood in Rochester. At 25, she was known for her infectious laugh and a drive that suggested she was going places. She worked hard, loved her family, and was the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday. Her life was a tapestry of small, kind moments. Nothing in Jocelyn's life suggested what was coming. Until April 20th, 1989. The spring air in Rochester was damp and heavy. On the evening of April 20th, Jocelyn was in her apartment on Lake Avenue. At 8 p.m., she was seen alive. By 10 p.m., the silence from her unit was deafening. Neighbors didn't hear a struggle. They didn't hear a cry for help. The next morning, a family member found her. Jocelyn had been the victim of a violent encounter inside her own sanctuary. And then silence. Detectives arrived to find a scene of chaos. There was no sign of forced entry, suggesting Jocelyn might have known the individual. They processed the room for evidence. One specific piece stood out, a foreign substance that didn't belong in the apartment. They interviewed everyone. Everyone had an alibi. The investigation hit a wall when the technology of the era couldn't provide the answers needed. But here is where the case takes a turn that nobody saw coming. Years later, a cold case unit re-examined the files. They found that a person of interest had been living in the same building under a false name. He disappeared the day Jocelyn was found. Police had walked past his door a dozen times. Today, Jocelyn's case remains unsolved. Her family still keeps her photos displayed, waiting for justice. Tell us in the comments below if you think the neighbor was the one involved. Case 2. Suzanne Lyall. Suzanne Lyall was a 19-year-old computer genius at SUNY Albany. She was shy, brilliant, and wore a signature opal ring. She loved her boyfriend and spent her free time coding. She was the girl who always checked in. Nothing in Suzanne's life suggested what was coming until March 2nd, 1998. At 9:20 p.m., Suzanne left her job at Babbage's in Crossgates Mall. She boarded a Capital District transit bus. At 9:40 p.m., she exited the bus at the Collins Circle stop on campus. It was a short walk to her dorm. She was seen walking toward the lights of the buildings. She never arrived. That was the last time anyone saw Suzanne alive. The search was immediate. Police used search dogs, but the scent ended near the bus stop. The first major lead came 2 days later. Suzanne's credit card was used at a convenience store ATM. The person using it knew her security code. But the security footage was too grainy to identify the face. Detectives realized this wasn't a random event. Someone knew her patterns. What investigators discovered next would change everything. The ATM where her card was used was miles away from her campus, in a direction she never traveled. Even more chilling, the amount withdrawn was the exact maximum allowed, a detail only someone close to her would know. Suzanne is still missing. Her parents helped pass laws to improve campus safety, but they still don't have their daughter. Tell us in the comments below if you think the person at the ATM was a stranger. Case 3. Beverly MacGowan. Beverly MacGowan was a 34-year-old bank teller who lived a quiet, structured life. She was meticulous, professional, and excited about her future. She was a woman who kept a detailed journal. Nothing suggested what was coming. Until July 19, 1990. Beverly told friends she was meeting a new woman named Alice who was interested in renting her property. On July 19th, she disappeared. Her car was found at an airport, but Beverly wasn't on any flight. Her remains were discovered in a rural area of New York. The scene showed a high level of calculation and preparation, and then silence. Police found that Beverly's credit cards were being used across the country. The trail led to a woman using Beverly's identity. This wasn't a crime of emotion. It was a cold-blooded identity theft. They found a fingerprint on a receipt in a New York hotel. It belonged to a woman known as the Chameleon Killer. When police finally cornered the suspect in 2002, she took her own secrets to the grave before they could take her into custody. She had been living as Beverly for years, traveling under her name. The case is technically closed due to the suspect's passing, but many believe there were others involved in New York who helped her hide. Tell us in the comments below if you believe this traveler acted completely alone. Case 4. Sara Anna Wood. Sara Anna Wood was 12 years old. She had a smile that could light up a room and a love for riding her bike through the quiet streets of Litchfield, New York. She was a daughter, a sister, and a student with her whole life ahead of her. Nothing in Sara's life suggested what was coming, until August 18th, 1993. It was a warm summer evening. Sara was riding her bicycle home from school at around 3 p.m. She was just a few hundred yards from her house. Her father saw her bike lying in the brush on the side of the road. The wheel was still spinning, but Sara was gone. The community of Litchfield turned out in hundreds to search the woods. Police checked every lead in the state. They eventually found a suspect named Louis Lent. When questioned about another event, Lent confessed to taking Sara. He gave details that only someone there would know. But here is the heartbreaking twist. Lent claimed he left Sara in a massive state forest. Despite years of searching, and Lent being behind bars, Sara has never been found. He toyed with investigators, giving them false locations for decades. He is in prison, but he holds the ultimate power over a grieving family by staying silent. Sara's father became a leading advocate for missing children. Every year, a memorial event is held in her honor. Tell us in the comments below why you think the suspect refuses to give the location. Case 5. Tammy Alexander. For 35 years, she was known only as the girl from the Cornfield. She was a teenager, found in a rural area in 1979. She had tan lines and a silver keychain. She was someone's daughter, but no one in New York knew who she was. Nothing in her appearance suggested how she ended up there. Until November 9th, 1979. On that morning, a farmer found her. She had been left in the middle of a heavy rainstorm. There was no ID, no purse, nothing. She had traveled a long way, but the road ended in Livingston County. Police checked missing persons reports in every state. Nothing matched. They kept her clothes and her biological evidence. In 2015, a high school friend in Florida realized Tammy had been missing since the 70s and filed a report. The DNA matched. The girl in the cornfield was Tammy Alexander. But here is the shock. She had been reported missing by her family decades earlier, but the paperwork was lost in a filing error. She had a name, but her attacker is still walking free. If you are watching from New York or Florida, you may actually know who Tammy was traveling with in the late 70s. Her family finally has her home, but they don't have the final answer. Tell us in the comments below if you think the police error prevented this from being solved. Case 6. Jaliek Rainwalker. Jaliek Rainwalker was a 12-year-old boy with a difficult past who was finally finding his footing. He was described as a child who just wanted to belong. He had a passion for the outdoors and a sensitive soul. Nothing in Jaliek's life suggested what was coming. Until November 1st, 2007. On that cold night in Greenwich, New York, Jaliek supposedly walked out of a residence and into the darkness. At 6 a.m., his adoptive father reported him missing. He claimed Jaliek left a note saying he was running away. But search teams found no sign of the boy in the surrounding woods or the nearby Battenkill River. The investigation turned inward. Police found that the note Jaliek supposedly wrote contained language that didn't match a 12-year-old's vocabulary. Detectives searched the family vehicle and found suspicious patterns in the mileage from that night. Every lead seemed to point back to the home, but without a physical recovery, no charges could be filed. The twist? Years later, a witness came forward claiming they saw a car matching the family's vehicle near a remote bridge that night. Jaliek's case remains one of New York's most haunting mysteries. His biological family still searches for him, refusing to believe he simply walked away. Tell us in the comments below if you think a child could survive that night alone. Case 7. Heidi Allen. Heidi Allen was 18 years old and full of life. She was working toward a future in healthcare and was known for her kindness to everyone she met. She worked at a convenience store in New Haven, New York. Nothing in Heidi's life suggested what was coming, until Easter Sunday, April 3rd, 1994. Heidi was working the morning shift alone. At 7:45 a.m., a customer saw her. At 8:12 a.m., the store was empty. Her car was still in the parking lot with the keys in the ignition. Her purse was behind the counter. She had vanished in a 30-minute window. The investigation was massive. 2 brothers were eventually charged with her disappearance. One was convicted, while the other was cleared. However, in an incredible turn of events, the convicted brother had his conviction vacated years later due to a lack of evidence. New witnesses emerged, claiming Heidi had been taken by a different group of men involved in local illegal activity. Despite searching hundreds of acres and even under concrete floors of local structures, Heidi has never been found. The mystery of what happened in those 27 minutes remains unsolved. Her family continues to seek the truth, keeping her memory alive in the community. Tell us in the comments below what you think happened during those 30 minutes. Case 8. Joan Risch. Joan Risch was a woman who lived what seemed like a predictable and peaceful life. A former publishing editor and devoted mother, she was known for her steady habits in the quiet suburb of Lincoln, Massachusetts. She wasn't the type to take risks or disappear without a word. Nothing in Joan's life suggested what was coming. Until the 24th of October, 1961. On that afternoon, Joan's young daughter returned from a playdate to a house of horrors. The kitchen was smeared with blood. The telephone had been ripped directly from the wall and tossed into a wastebasket. An overturned table sat in the center of the room, yet Joan's 2-year-old son was found safe in his crib upstairs. There were no signs of a forced entry, but a trail of blood led from the kitchen to the driveway, where it simply stopped. The investigation spanned several states. Police looked into her past, even discovering that Joan had recently checked out several library books, all of them about people who staged their own disappearances. Was she a victim of a struggle, or was she following a script of her own making? Motorists later reported seeing a dazed, bloodied woman matching Joan's description walking along Route 128. But she was never seen again. For over 60 years, Joan's family has been left in a state of permanent limbo. Was she a victim of a dark crime, or a woman who chose to vanish into a new life? Tell us in the comments below. Do you think those library books were a coincidence, or a blueprint? Case 9. Wendy Jerome. Wendy Jerome was a 14-year-old with a bright future. She was a student in Rochester who loved her friends and was always home by her curfew. She was the kind of daughter every parent dreams of. Nothing in Wendy's life suggested what was coming. Until Thanksgiving Eve, November 22, 1984, Wendy left a friend's house to walk the short distance home. She never made it. Her body was found hours later behind a local school. The community was paralyzed with fear. The investigation focused on local residents and known individuals in the area. Forensic evidence was collected, including biological material from the scene. But in 1984, DNA testing was not yet a tool for police. The case sat on a shelf for over 30 years. In 2020, investigators used modern genetic genealogy to track the family tree of the suspect. They were led to a man named Timothy Williams, who had been a neighbor at the time. He had even attended community meetings about Wendy's safety. When police knocked on his door in Florida, the decades-old mystery was finally solved. He was charged and convicted, proving that time does not hide the truth. Tell us in the comments below if you find it scary that the attacker stayed so close. Case 10. Sheila Jean Shepherd. Sheila Jean Shepherd was 26 years old and lived in an apartment in Saratoga Springs. She was an independent woman who enjoyed her work and her social life. She was known for being cautious and keeping her doors locked. Nothing in Sheila's life suggested what was coming. Until November 24, 1980. Sheila was found in her home by her own family after she failed to show up for a holiday dinner. The scene was disturbing and appeared to be staged to look like a different kind of crime. There was no sign of forced entry. For 40 years, the case remained one of the city's oldest cold cases. Detectives interviewed dozens of people, but the evidence didn't point clearly to any one person. The shocking detail? In 2023, modern DNA analysis was performed on a piece of evidence from the kitchen. The results led investigators directly to a family member, her own cousin, Stephen Shepherd. He had been living his life for 4 decades while the family grieved. He was arrested in Washington state and brought back to New York to face the truth. This finale reminds us that sometimes the person most trusted is the one holding the darkest secret. Tell us in the comments below your reaction to the family member being the one involved. 10 cases. 10 families still waiting for full justice. 10 names that deserve to be remembered. Jocelyn Carr, Suzanne Lyall, Beverly MacGowan, Sara Anna Wood, Tammy Alexander, Jaliek Rainwalker, Heidi Allen, John Risch, Wendy Jerome, and Sheila Jean Shepherd. These are not just stories. These are real people, real families, real pain that never goes away. If any of these cases affected you, tell us in the comments. Which case shocked you the most? Which one do you think will finally be solved? And if you want more, we cover a new U.S. state every single week. New York was just the beginning. Next week, Pennsylvania. Subscribe, hit the bell, because the next case might be from your state, and it might change everything. Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and never stop asking questions. This is Crime Archives TV. Good night.